All right, project update Alea Iacta Est. If you can hear that, sorry about the background noise. It's really hot here today. I'm running the air conditioner full blast. Shrug. All right, last time I showed you what the components and the setup for this was, so let's take a look at what I've come up with. First off, it's not jostle resistant for one reason that I'll show you in a moment, but it is vertical storage friendly. You can basically do this however you like. First off, here's the rolling tray. The bottom is felted. Sorry, let's get the cheat sheet and the rule book out of the way. Here's the main rolling tray. The bottom is felted, so you can use this as a rolling tray, obviously. You can either leave that in the box or take it out. It really doesn't matter. Inside of that are all of the temple pieces. All of the board pieces that you're going to be using. They fit nicely in the box, but they do jostle around kind of, which is why there's a lot of noise to this box. Possibly I could have done something that restricts them. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure how I feel about that. It would impose a lot of restrictions on what the rest of these chips would be like. I'm pretty happy with this. I'm going to keep it. The individual dice packs all contain 8 dice, 1 in each player color. There is 1 dice box in each player color. Got all 5 here. They fit perfectly. You've got the main item tray. So there is a laws well, like law stack. There is a province stack. There is a, I forget what these guys are called, governor stack. There is the first player token, and there is a well that has all of your reroll tokens. And this is a standard scooped well, so like it's easy to take out the ones at the bottom once you get to that. Possibly one change that I'm going to make to the next version of this is this well is going to be a little bit taller. That way it's easier to pick them out from the top. But like, this is pretty good. It's really space efficient. It keeps all of the things and it keeps them nice and topped up. And the height is exactly in clearance with the top of the box, which is why there's no box lift and why this is vertical storage friendly. It's not jostle resistant because the governors are exactly the height of this tray. So like there's 1 millimeter clearance from the bottom and the top comes up to basically right at the top of the box. And also these governor tiles are like really thin tiles. They're about 0.5 millimeter. Verify that. What are we looking at here? We are looking at 1.2 millimeters, my bad. So like, this is tiny. This can definitely fit into any kind of gap that I can introduce here. The only way to prevent this from happening and making this jostle resistant is if I move this stack so that it's sideways, and then you'd be like taking out governors from the side. I don't like that because that kind of sideways, well, it works when you only have like a few things, but as soon as you have a stack like this that's really tall, that is that whose length changes over the course of the game, you either get into the situation where it falls over and then you get like awkward little positions that you need to dig shits out of, or you need some kind of spring-loaded mechanism to make sure that there's tension so that they're all always butting up against the front end of the well. I didn't want to do either of those things here. Possibly I'll do it in a future revision, but like right now that means that this is not exactly jostle resistant, because when you open this thing up, you might find that 1 or 2 of the governors have gone for a joyride. I don't know that that's the biggest deal. This one mostly stays on my shelf. Ideally, I would solve this, didn't this time. That's okay. All right. Separately from the main well, it turns out there's 2 things that you need to, or 3 things really, right? When you have a certain number of players in, you also put in the temple, which comes with the blessing tokens. Now, the blessing tokens, first off, they have an extra deep well, which I would always keep because you're supposed to take these out without looking at their value. And when you take, ideally this would be in some sort of bag, but then it wouldn't fit perfectly into this box, and I kind of wanted that characteristic, that they're not too jumpy. But because it's such a deep well, it's easy for you to dip in without looking at what you're doing. In addition to the blessing tokens, there's also 1 law that gives you extra points per blessing token that you have, and if you're not playing with the temple, there's no point in using this law, so you don't. There's a little side pocket here on the blessing well that lets you store that along with the things that it references. If you end up playing with the blessings, you just shuffle this back into your main laws area. I think this is probably the first of these projects that's made me see how much of a difference there is between 3D printed inserts and the handcrafted ones that I was rolling with earlier. I showed you guys this thing, which, I mean, I'm mildly ashamed of, but I gotta be honest, I'm still like, this is still cool, and it's still definitely better than the insert that came with it. But you can see that there's like little signs of wear. I've had to repair this with glue over the years. In addition to having to repair this with glue in various places over the years because it was like literally falling apart. The adhesives that you use for this don't stay forever. You can see that there's a lot of space waste, right? This fits the same number of components as the main card, as the main box that I just designed, and also it had to have dice positioned in it inside of Ziploc bags instead of having individual wells for dice. And also, the rolling tray was this tiny round thing instead of a nice big chunky square that you can chuck dice into. So that made me really happy. I had to do a couple of revisions on these dice wells because, as you can see, let's take a look. You can see that they're not exactly symmetrical, right? You can see that there's this square that perfectly fits the dice, and then there's this little jutting piece on one end that butts up against the next square. The reason for this is that, so if I opted for the single line of dice, I'd only be able to fit 4 players in a line, and then one would be extra spare floating around doing something else. And if I did just the perfect square that exactly accommodates the dice, there'd be this little, like, I think it was 10 millimeter leftover space on the right hand side or the left hand side, whichever, that would make these jostle around extra. And I wanted these to be like secure. I wanted the only thing that jostles to be these player boards, and even then I possibly could have solved this in a better way. I'm still kind of racking my brain on how to do that. But like for now, just for ease of use, chuck them in here. That's fine. The rest of the stuff stays in place. There's the admitted issue with the governor tokens, but other than that, holy crap, this is still an amazing improvement over the default Alea Iacta Est box, and I'm really proud of it. All right, that's that. I'll let you know what the next one is. Wish me luck.